I think I can handle it.
Very good then, Mr. McGinnis. Welcome to my world.
Gathered together from the cosmic reaches of the universe, here in this great hall of justice.
Hey there, and welcome to 2018. The Hall of Justice podcast is back, and I promised more than one Star Wars podcast, and like Rogue One and like The Force Awakens, we have delivered. We got a lot of responses from the first review, and none of my opinions have changed, but I wanted to bring in someone that's been on the podcast before, that's been ridiculously qualified to talk about these things, and somebody that could have just a differing point of view. The idea is that J.C. Reifenberg has been a Star Wars fan his whole life, but he's now directed 2 short films that are considered Star Wars fan films. He has worked for Lucasfilm. He is currently a filmmaker out in California, and he happens to be my old coworker from our days at MLB Advanced Media. Which, by the way, we thought about doing an expose podcast on all the scandals going on at BAM, yet we thought, you know what, I'd like some downloads in 2018, so we figured let's do a Star Wars podcast. JC, welcome. Welcome to the show. Man, I'm telling you, BAM has been in the news for all the wrong reasons, and I said, man, I know where all the bodies are buried.
Oh, I haven't even seen any of that. I'll have to go digging after the show ends.
But you've been on the podcast before. You did. You came on from Comic-Con once. I remember that. And you also came on for Rogue One, and you came on also for Force Awakens. So I believe this is your 3rd or 4th appearance on the podcast.
Yeah, I think we did a Summer 78 podcast also.
Yes, we did. That's right. We did. Summer 78 is a short film that was fantastic. It's an homage to Star Wars toys. Did you see there's that new Netflix series about the history of toys or something like that? Yeah, I have to see that.
It's in my queue. It looks good.
Yeah, it looks really cool. And the first episode is all about Star Wars. And then this year, you have added, well, before I get to that part, you also work on a superhero-related podcast. A lot of people think this is a cheap imitation podcast of that podcast, but you work with Kevin Smith and Mark on the Fatman on Batman show, don't you?
Yes, I produce Fatman on Batman for Kevin and Mark.
So I don't think you have you done that since you've been on the podcast? Is it multiple years? Because how did that all come about?
Let's see. I mean, I've worked with Kevin now. It'll be 7 years in March. And I think we got just like a little studio space, and they were with Defy Media before, and the contract was up with Defy, and I've done Hollywood Babylon and Jay and Bob Get Old, so they just moved from Defy and just had me do it kind of in-house again.
That's cool, and it's a great show. And what I like is it's a similar topic, but very rarely the same. And the things that they say, they're just it's like-minded. And what I also love is there is so few, terrestrial content that involves these subject matters. So you're telling me that any fan can find broadcasters and movie makers and writers to talk about Thor. I mean, that's pretty incredible that this space exists.
Yeah, I mean, Kevin obviously has been in the geek world since Clerks came out, and he had his Star Wars dialogue at the counter. And Mark loves geekery, but his list of accomplishments is, long and distinguished. He, film editor of LA Times, Entertainment Weekly. He just, I think, finished up on Castle Rock, the new J.J. Abrams show. So he's done comic books. So he is a great narrative writer in and of himself, but also, something of a film critic with a massive resume also.
Yeah, it's a great show. It's a great listen. And you do a great job with it. And then, I see this stuff on social media, and, you and I have now known each other for over 10 years. So I see the story that you started a pop-up bar. Yes. And I was going to ask the question, why a pop-up bar? Why not a regular bar? But in the interim, since we've had you on, you made it a real bar. So tell us the story and tell us about Scum and Villainy.
Well, the idea with doing it as a pop-up is it was kind of, it does two things. It allows you to reduce your risk. Going into a bar situation, getting the liquor license and the lease and everything is a huge and expensive undertaking. So, we launched as a pop-up to be like, hey, do people want this? Is this something that people want? And they did. And so we operated as a pop-up for 4 months. And at the end of 4 months, we switched over and keep regular hours and do all sorts of fun stuff. So, Kevin does Fatman on Batman from the bar, and we do Geeks Who Drink Trivia from the bar. And I guess I should mention, if you don't know what Scum and Villainy Cantina is, it is a intergalactic space bar that is inspired by the cantina from Star Wars. So when you walk in here...
The Mos Eisley Cantina.
It is an immersive bar experience. I like to say, you walk off Hollywood Boulevard onto another world, like a parallel dimension. We don't have TVs in the bar because, most sci-fi doesn't have TVs. People don't watch TVs, they watch holograms. And if holograms were easy to do, I'd have them all over the bar, but they're not. Right. And what I've found is, and we've talked about this before off the air, is, if you look at MLB.com and you look at ESPN and you look at the NFL, TV ratings are down. Like, sports isn't number one anymore. But we're about to talk about Last Jedi that just hit $1 billion at the box office, and Rogue One hit $1 billion, and Force Awakens hits $2 billion. Black Panther, I bet, is going to be the biggest movie that Marvel has had since the first Avengers. And there are 1 million sports bars in this country, and there are no geek bars. There's no bar for a geek to put on his jersey, where geeks call jerseys costumes, and geeks call statistics trivia. But it's the same thing as a sports fan. Then there's no place for them to go wearing their jersey or costume and to talk about the statistics or trivia that they find passion from. And so I created that here in Los Angeles. It is it's like a sports bar for geeks, or a comic book shop that doesn't sell comic books. We sell alcohol.
Right. It's really smart, and it's really the idea behind this podcast, because we created this podcast because I have a sportscasting career, but sportscasters or broadcasters don't discuss Superman. They don't do a Star Wars show. You would never go on WFAN in New York or KLAC in Los Angeles. You would never go on these radio stations and start breaking down Boba Fett. But
right.
but if there is a space, and what I found from just people who listen to this and the feedback I get on social media is people appreciate that we take it seriously, that we're not too, I don't use the term geek culture. I always say, if you need to see the list of all the women I dated to prove I'm not a geek, I can show you. And my idea is that there is a sci-fi brain, and there is it is becoming a mainstream thing. We called this podcast the Hall of Justice, and I use the slogan, if you're old enough to know what the Hall of Justice is, you're our demographic, because this is not a millennial podcast. And I think that in the space, there's a lot of geek talk. And I think that there's a stigma about that. I think what you're doing is fantastic. And I think the analogy that you made, comparing the costume to the sports jersey, the guy that puts on the Rams jersey, well, that's the same thing. And it's the same passion. And it's why I get more, and I've said this publicly before, I get more downloads on the Hall of Justice than something I do called Sports with Friends. And I have a 22-year sports career. And people want to hear this, because if there are a billion sports podcasts, there's only a million of these kind. You know what I'm saying? And you have a unique space there. And I would imagine as the buzz grows, I mean, social media has probably helped. I'm sure Kevin has helped. But just the idea that this place, gets the idea. I know this. If I'm going to California, that's a destination for me. But I'm your P1. I'm your demographic. You know what I mean?
Right. We're a spot for people that have never had a spot before. Right. I'm a Chicago Bears fan. I went to school in Miami. I've lived in New York, and I would throw on a Walter Payton jersey and go to the local sports bar in Hoboken or ESPN Zone. And I knew where I was going to sit. I knew where I was going to sit because I sat next to the guys who wore the number 9 Jim McMahon jersey or the number 50 Mike Singletary jersey. I knew who I was going to sit with. I knew who my friends were going to be based on what they were wearing. And there wasn't a space like that you could walk into and go, oh, look at that guy wearing the Mandalorian jacket over there. I'm going to go talk to him about Boba Fett because I love Boba Fett. Or that guy's got a Star Trek scarf on. I'm going to go talk to him what he thinks about the new Star Trek show on the CBS app. And now there's at least one place that after you go and see Infinity War, you can come to, and that everybody else here has seen Infinity War. And they're going to talk to you about it in the way that you want to be talked to about it, because it is they're passionate about it too. Something I've been saying since Last Jedi came out, because I wasn't fond of the movie, and people said, well, why are you so upset? It's just a movie. And I go, you know what? It's not just a movie. Star Wars isn't just a movie. If it was just a movie, it wouldn't have sold to Disney. It wouldn't still be going the way it is. To me, Star Wars is how I made my first best friend. We discovered his older brother's Kenner action figures. It is how I made friends in high school. It's how I met other film people in college. It's how you and I became friends. It's how I met people when I was in New York. It's how I came out here. It's how I met Kevin Smith. It's how I got this bar open. It's how I've made a name for myself professionally as well as socially. So that's not just a movie. That's a piece of culture. And when something is a piece of culture, it's more than, oh, it's just a throwaway 2-hour, it doesn't matter, Transformers Episode 7. Like, Star Wars needs to be more than that, because it's been so much more than just a movie to people for over 40 years.
Let me let's do this before I want to get into the movie. How can people find out information about the Scum and Villainy? Like, am I saying it right?
Best way to do it is our Facebook page, which is Scum and Villainy Cantina on Facebook. So facebook.com/Scum and Villainy Cantina.
Nice. Very, very
cool. We're pretty active on that. So there's always something going on. We've got, like, this Thursday, we have a band that shows up dressed as NASA astronauts, and they pretend that they got caught in a time warp and ended up in a galaxy far, far away. and they do live band karaoke. So people come up and get to sing with a group of NASA astronauts, and we've had, Jon Snow from Game of Thrones get up and sing a song, and
get out.
All sorts of Star Wars aliens and Star Trek characters, and it's really fun.
That's very cool. The whole idea, the concept is really sharp and really smart, and it's a great idea. And I just wish you the best of luck with it. When we last had you on, and I would recommend if anybody wants to pause and go back and listen to some of the other podcasts to get more of a context for what you're about to hear. What I remember was you had issues with Force Awakens, but that you had been intrigued enough to say, I wanted to see where they took it, that the questions that were unanswered, you wanted to see the answers to that. Were any of those satisfied? And I'll start the conversation there.
No, not at all. The measure of a successful sequel is the problems I had with Force Awakens. Like you said, it was, who's this Snoke guy, right? How did he come to power? He's obviously old. The Emperor would have known he was around. Why did the Emperor let him keep going? Who are Rey's parents? How is she so powerful? Why does she walk through the Star Wars universe, as successful or more successful than Anakin Skywalker? What's the reason for that? I mean, very clearly, what we were told was none of that stuff matters. That stuff isn't important. And then as a filmmaker, my response is, then why did you bring it up in the first place if you're saying it's not important now?
It seems like it's a big, it just happened. And it was almost like, I heard it suggested that Rian Johnson, who made the Last Jedi, didn't like the idea of Snoke, so he just wanted to get rid of him. And it's just, you're talking about a legacy here. You're not talking about your petty squabbles. Like it seemed like that was just, I didn't like Snoke, so I'm not going to bother paying him off.
Right. Like in film, it's an old Isaac Asimov, world-renowned author who's won 1 million awards. He said, if you show a gun, that gun better fire at some point in your story, right? Or else why did you show it? If you look at a movie like Die Hard, from the first shot of Die Hard to the last shot of Die Hard, every single camera angle, every single word in every single sentence of dialogue is multi-layered. It has multiple purposes. The first shot in Die Hard is Bruce Willis's hand clutching onto the arm of the airplane. He's afraid of airplanes, right? And he gets into the conversation with the guy next to him who says, take your shoes off. Well, obviously when he gets to Nakatomi Tower, he takes his shoes off, which is how the famous scene where he walks through glass and has to pick it out of his feet happens. But what you don't realize, what subconsciously you see, is that he has his wedding ring on still in that first shot. So he's married from the very first shot of the movie, and the movie's all about him trying to save his marriage. That sort of attention to detail, I don't think was planned in The Last Jedi. Meaning, I think things were put in like, hey, Chewbacca, we don't want Chewbacca just to be Rey's dog, so let's give him porgs. But the porgs don't really do anything, An example I'll give is, instead of having Rey and Chewbacca fly around at the end of the movie, and spoilers if you haven't seen the movie, if you're the person who hasn't seen the movie.
We spoiled the heck out of it last time. Don't worry about that.
But it's like, instead of having a scene where Rey is showing off again, she's already killed this guy, she's already knocked Luke Skywalker down, here she is showing off again. Why don't you show her struggle? Show her and Chewbacca's struggle. And you have that great... You have a chance for great dialogue. Chewie, I need you to hit button 3, button 6, and button 7, or we're not going to make it. There's too many TIE fighters. I can't do this myself. I need you to man the forward cannon. And Chewbacca's growling and yelling at her. the Millennium Falcon is a ship that's supposed to be piloted by 2 people. We've only got 1 person, Ray. If I take my hands off the control to hit those buttons on the other side of the cockpit, there's no way we're going to make it. And you have that go back and forth. You put them in peril. Then you know what you do? Instead of just having the Porg smash his face against the glass for laughs, what you do is Chewbacca looks at the Porg and lurches the controls of the Falcon so the Porg flips to the other side and hits the buttons, right?
Right.
You're showing Chewbacca is clever. You're putting the characters in peril. You still get the comedy out of the Porg, and you give it a purpose. Yeah, it's this stupid little pug dog owl thing, but you gave it purpose. You gave it purpose beyond just humor. It's humor, but it also helps save the day. It's a tool that Chewbacca uses. And that is where I feel like Force Awakens and Last Jedi continually come up short, where there are things in them that are put there that don't really tie into the bigger world. They're put there because they don't want Chewbacca to be by himself, so give him animals. But that's not enough. The animals have to serve a purpose beyond just putting them in the story. The Vulpix, the ice fox, at least the ice fox is in that story and it serves a purpose. It leads the way out.
Figures out how to escape, right?
Yeah, C-3PO says there's no escape, and the organic animal is able to find the way out, and it helps them out. I have no problem with those. But Porgs, you got to give Porgs a reason to exist beyond selling toys for me to be okay with them in the story. And I thought they were great. I thought they were cute, well-designed, fun. But there needs to be one moment where they do something to contribute to the good guys, or else they're just a waste of my time. It's lazy. That's the type of thing that I was taught in film school. That's the type of thing that when I handed in a rough draft of a script, they would go, you can't just put this in here. It needs to serve a purpose beyond. My problems with The Last Jedi, and everybody who's writing these long articles defending The Last Jedi and calling people like you and I out who don't like it, saying, oh, you guys are just the old regime that are resistant to change. Well, no, I may not have liked what they've done, but they didn't give me a reason why I had to respect what they've done.
But you were giving them a chance. You were not saying that Kylo Ren, I didn't love Kylo Ren, but the issue is I wanted to see where it went, and I hate where it went.
So that's
the issue. To me, they created this other new universe. All right, I bought. I said cancel Rebels and let's make an animated series to see the backstories of all these things. Do Maz Kanata. I'm fine with that.
Here's the thing. I like Kylo Ren the most. He's the only character I like in these new movies. And I'll tell you why. Because he is a Skywalker bloodline. He is an emotional, whiny brat. And if your parents were the heroes of the galaxy, you would always be living in their shadow, and you would probably grow up to be a whiny, emotional brat. So I'd buy it. Kylo Ren is the only one in these movies that struggles with choices. He struggles with the choice to kill his father. He struggles with the choice to kill his mother and ultimately can't do it. That, to me, is the most interesting scene in this movie. But here's the problem with it. You watch Leia sense Kylo Ren about to kill her, and he doesn't do it. But later in the movie, Leia and Luke get together and they're like, yep, there's no good left in him. Where very clearly an hour before in the movie, you show that there's very much definitely still good in him. If you are going to show me on screen that Kylo Ren has good left in him, and then you are going to show me Princess Leia, who for the 2 hours of Force Awakens says, there's good in him, there's good in him, there's good in him. And at the beginning of this movie, there's good in him. And then you show me a scene where he has good in him. You have to show me a scene between that scene and the scene where she says, there's no good in him, that changes her mind.
Right.
There's no scene where you see that she changes her mind. She just changes her mind and we have to accept it. Luke Skywalker is the one who stood up to Yoda and Obi-Wan and said, I can't kill my own father. And they said to him, well, then the Empire's already won.
Right. Then all is lost. Right.
All is lost. And Luke goes and proves otherwise, and you get to see it. And now Luke has lost that. Why has he lost that? You haven't explained that. Luke and Leia needed to have a scene where you understand why they feel like Kylo Ren is irredeemable, but Darth Vader was. And that's where it doesn't add up. You're showing me scenes where Kylo Ren seems very redeemable. He saves Rey. He kills Snoke. He can't kill Princess Leia. But then at the end of the movie, without cause, all of his family members say, nope, he's gone. Why? What did he do? Everything you've shown me in this movie shows that he's actually trying to be a good guy. It doesn't add up. It doesn't make sense. There's no internal logic within the movie. That's the problem I have with it. It's not that you made Luke the bitter old man in the sea. It's that there's no logic behind it. It's not that Leia shouldn't be able to use the Force like Mary Poppins. It's that there's no explanation. Give me a scene later in the movie, if you want to put that scene in, where Luke and Leia talk, and Luke goes, Leia, you told me you were never going to train or Leia uses the Force to do something in front of Luke. Luke goes, Leia, you told me you were never going to train as a Jedi, but you've been training. And Leia says, Luke, I'm a politician. Politicians always use every weapon at their disposal. Of course I trained. I'm a Skywalker. Give me that scene, because then that justifies her flying through space earlier. She's a Skywalker. She's been training. We just didn't see it. But none of that's in there. None of that's in there. You're just left to accept it.
Her death, or her non-death, was so disappointing because, knowing what you knew, and look, Rian Johnson couldn't not know that Carrie Fisher died by release. You had the out. And if you didn't want to kill her early on in the movie because you wanted to have her have an arc, why didn't you let her get an ending? You created an ending, and you, in essence, made Laura Dern's character irrelelevant.
Right. Here's the other thing with Laura Dern's
I didn't understand any of that. I don't understand how they killed her. They killed her, and she's floating in space, and you're like, that's it. And all you got to do is play the little theme, and you're done. Give her a burial, and you're over. And people would say, well, they killed Princess Leia, but she died. What were you going to do?
Right, and then have Kylo Ren shoot the 2 TIE pilots because he's fucking pissed that, sorry, swearing, but he's pissed that they killed his mom because he's not ready to turn yet.
Right.
And that makes the scene between he and Leia he and Rey more powerful, because you know that if Rey just says the right thing, he's going to turn back to the good side. But you didn't do that. You didn't do it. You erased all the stakes. The Laura Dern character, which I don't understand at all, and people will say that it's toxic masculinity or anything, but the problem with Laura Dern in that movie is she doesn't do anything. She doesn't do anything, and there's no reason to like her. And the biggest problem I have is Poe Dameron commits treason 3 times in that movie. 3 times commits treason, and
you're supposed to just think he's a hero.
And the 2 women in the movie who he pulls a gun on her, and she goes, he's cute, I like him. He's spunky, I like him, let him off. Nobody would do that. Right. That's like Trump pardoning the sheriff in Arizona. It's like, this guy is a criminal. He is a criminal. He just belongs in jail.
Well,
and you have to give us justification for why do these women like him? He's a good-looking Spaniard.
But big deal.
You know what I mean? Like, it's not. The problem is that it diminishes their characters. That sentence diminishes it. It plays into the stereotype that women will let a good-looking guy get away with murder, which essentially is what they did. That's the problem with that scene. Hold him accountable. Be a strong woman. And on her death, why did you kill her? Why is she in the movie? She's in the movie for a brief second, and you have her go away. Let her be the hero in the next one, and let Leia take the step back. And let me ask you this. Did you stand up and cheer when she flew through the Star Destroyer?
Oh,
let me play the movie differently. When the bridge of that spaceship blows up, the next scene, and Leia Mary Poppins through space, and then in the next scene, the first line of dialogue is Admiral Akbar is dead. Right? We didn't get to see him die. Just Admiral Akbar is dead.
Right.
Why did you kill Admiral Akbar? Let Admiral Akbar live. Let him live. Then at the end, when they have to pull this maneuver during what I call the OJ White Bronco chase through space that makes no sense, give Admiral Akbar that moment. Give Akbar the moment where he goes, I've been a general for 40 years, Leia. It's my time. The rebellion must live on. I'm going to do this for the good of the people. And give Akbar the moment.
The Laura Dern moment, right.
Give Akbar that moment. You know why? Because even though I had all the problems with the movie up to that point, that's a stand up and cheer moment for me.
Right.
You have given Akbar a fitting end. You've made him a hero. The guy who the It's a Trap guy who is a huge piece of pop culture gets his moment, but he doesn't. He's killed off screen. Out with the old, in with the new. It was like that was the theme of the movie, and that's what they kept pushing. But which is fine, but internal logic dictates that, like, don't give me fan service with the porgs. Give me fan service. Let Akbar go out like a badass.
I love it.
One of my friends summed it up like this, and I'm not going to name his name because he's involved with Lucasfilm. But he said, it's not impossible for any character to show any trait or portray any turn, but you have to get there. You have to earn it. If you just tell people between two stories, this character has fundamentally changed because of this, you inevitably invite disagreement and diversiveness because you didn't earn it. If you show on screen that turn and execute it well, the audience will accept anything. And that is precisely how I feel about The Last Jedi.
I mean, do you think I wrote things down while you were speaking. I didn't want to interrupt you. Do you think that the popularity of the Cassian character in Rogue One made Poe Dameron who he is?
No, because Poe was that way I think what they were trying to show with Poe is that Poe needs to learn there are consequences to his actions. You can't just be a hotshot fighter pilot. I just don't think that they executed it very well on a internal journey level. I think that they took what they saw in The Force Awakens, which was Wedge Antilles on steroids, and added, a stand-up routine and it reminds me of Pirates of the Caribbean 2, right? What was so great about Pirates of the Caribbean 1? Johnny Depp acting like a drunk Pepe Le Pew. So Pirates of the Caribbean 2, it's like, well, now you get that for 2 hours. And it's too much. It's too much. Dial it back. Let the moments where he is sassy be few and far between so you appreciate them more. Cassian in Rogue One worked so well because he was a dick. He was a bad dude at the beginning of the movie. You see him shoot a guy in the back. He is a mercenary for the rebellion. Anything for the cause. Anything for the cause. And guess what? This orphan girl changed his mind. Her belief in hope changed his mind. He mutinied against the people that he shot people in the back for. You allowed that character to grow within the story. How does Poe grow within the story? He doesn't. He's still mutinying at the end of the movie. He's still... You don't give any of these characters any arc, right? They just do things and then do another thing and then do another thing. to get to the next lightsaber fight. Everything that you learn about these characters is learned through dialogue. It's not learned through choice. Meaning, if my wife says to me, and I'm not married, or let's say your wife, Seth, your wife says to you, Seth, JC is a bad influence. I don't want you spending time with him, right? And then you go,
I've heard that conversation.
And then you say, he's my best friend. I've known him for 20 years, right? Then on screen, you and I go and hang out. You have told the audience so much. You have told them, you've set up a question, right? Is JC a bad influence, or is Seth's wife controlling? And then in the next scene, JC gets to have a scene, and Seth's wife gets to have a scene where you get to learn a little bit more about them. Oh, she's not controlling. JC really is a bad influence. And then in the next scene, you can plant another seed. Well, maybe JC isn't a bad influence. Maybe Seth's wife just saw what she thought was JC doing something that he didn't do, and it's all a misunderstanding. That's the way you create complex characters. You reveal characters' motivations through the choices they make, not the things they say. And that's where this movie fails over and over and over again. The only person in this movie who makes a choice consistently is Kylo Ren. He makes a choice to kill his master Snoke. He makes a choice not to kill his mother and go against the First Order. He makes choices throughout this movie that are interesting, that reveal how complex a character he is. Who else makes a choice? That's not easy.
Yeah, but one of the things about Kylo Ren that I didn't understand was his conflicting feelings for Rey. And there were two things with one scene that I had major issue with. Right after Snoke gets killed, the red stormtrooper guys all of a sudden attack them. And but to me that's Adam West and Burt Ward right there. Like it becomes like all I needed was Biff Pow, and that's what that scene felt like.
I agree.
And I saw young people in the theater drooling, like they thought that was the greatest. And then my second part is, wait a second, aren't these the two most powerful people with the Force? Who are these yams? Why not just shove them against the wall? Like you have power. What? To me, like if the answer is, well, it was staging and director of photography and all, if it's because it's a PG-13 movie, then I guess I outage Star Wars.
Right. That I agree. And here's the issue with it. Why don't they attack Kylo Ren and Rey while Snoke is still alive? Okay, well, because they didn't know that he was in trouble. All right, so maybe they're dumb. Once Kylo Ren has killed Snoke, he has essentially become the supreme leader of the Imperials or the First Order or whatever they're calling the Galactic Empire now. Those characters should be indebted to him, right? Meaning, like, if the president of the United States is assassinated, the Secret Service then protects the vice president, right?
Instantly. They don't check to see how he's doing.
So, I don't understand why they even attacked Kylo Ren. I like that, even within the structure of, if those guards were only indebted to Snoke, right? Personal security, you need to let us know that. But the way they're set up, they're like the Emperor's Royal Guard clones, and the Emperor's Royal Guard clones wouldn't go after Darth Vader if he killed the Emperor. They would protect the new Emperor. It just, everything in the movie doesn't add up. It does. It seems like it's all done for the, if you're reading fan fiction, Oh, wouldn't it be cool if Rey and Kylo Ren fought back to back with a bunch of people who had lightsaber-like weapons that turn into whips, that turn into sabers, that turn into blades? I mean, yeah, it's cool in a video game. I like that in a video game, but I don't want to see it on screen without any justification.
Like, what is the appeal to millennials? Like, why are young people having such a great time with this? Why is it making as much money as it is? I'm not saying it shouldn't make a lot of money, but it has had a shelf life. It is still going. People all over the world keep going. Many people have seen it 2 and 3 times. Because
Star Wars fans will always do that, one. But also, I think, and I see it a lot, in the deep dive Star Wars community, it's not okay. Like, you're not supposed to say, hey, there is a such thing as too much Star Wars. You know, the more Star Wars, the better. We didn't have Star Wars for so long. The more Star Wars, the better. You're not supposed to say, hey, maybe there is a such thing as too much of a good thing. The analogy I use is gummy bears. If you eat a small package of gummy bears, it's fantastic. But if you eat 6 pounds of gummy bears, you're sick to your stomach and you want to throw up. And that, I think, is part of the problem with Star Wars, is it's like, the reason people fell in love with Star Wars is because you loved it, but then it was 3 years or 6 years or 10 years or 20 years before the next movie. So you didn't have a choice. You wanted to know who Hammerhead was and Greedo and Jabba the Hutt because there wasn't anything else. You already know who Luke is, so you wanted to know who these other people were. But now, like, I don't even need to talk about Last Jedi because we're going to talk about Han Solo in a minute. You know, we're going to talk about Rebels Season 4 finale, which, to me, Rebels is the most Star Wars thing.
It's so well done.
I mean, look, Rogue One is fantastic and very Star Wars. And you can hear us talk about it for an hour on the other podcast. Rebels.
Yeah, we did.
Rebels lives up to that. Everything that happens in Rebels serves to make A New Hope a better movie. It serves to play into what Luke has to go through episodes 4, 5, and 6. And these new movies, I just don't. Everything all too much. Give us 5 years between the movies so that we can really deep dive and dissect and find a way to love the problems with Last Jedi. You know, Last Jedi just made $1 billion. You mentioned it. People keep going back and seeing it, et cetera, et cetera. Last Jedi is actually doing business at the same pace that Rogue One did business. Now, the analogy I'll make for that is, imagine if Doctor Strange did $1 billion and Infinity War or Ant-Man. And Infinity War only did as much business as Ant-Man did. Would you see that as a success? Do you think Marvel is banking?
Look at Justice League. Justice League is the example. You put Superman and Batman in the same movie and it made less money.
Right. It made less money than Wonder Woman. So the thing is like, Force Awakens made $2 billion. I don't think anybody expected Last Jedi to make $2 billion, but Last Jedi is going to cap out at what Rogue One did. Rogue One that doesn't have R2-D2, C-3PO, Rey, Carrie Fisher, Mark Hamill, Admiral Akbar, X-Wing, you know, like it doesn't have, it's a bunch of nobodies. Rogue One, the movie about a bunch of nobodies, was so well done that it is going to make a similar amount of money as Last Jedi, who had all of your big hitters, your Justice League, your Infinity War, you know? Like, it doesn't, I don't think if I'm Walt Disney and I'm a shareholder and I was like, that movie's going to make $2 billion, that I would be satisfied with it making $1 billion. You know, stocks are, you look into the future with the stock market, right? So when they announced Last Jedi, Disney stock went up with the expectation that it was going to perform similarly to Force Awakens. And now when it doesn't, do the stocks turn back down? You know, and that's what I think millennials aren't seeing. I think that's what people who are saying this is such a successful Star Wars movie, the highest grossing film of 2017. Yeah, but this should have been a $2 billion movie. This should have been better than The Force Awakens. And it's just not.
We can do this for hours and hours and hours. I want to steer the ship back towards the future. Marvel or Disney buying Star Wars, they're not going to stop this anytime soon. And it seems like they are going to keep creating and keep creating and keep creating. It seems like Last Jedi did a whole lot. Like the way I described it in the first review of this was, I just called it a big matzo ball. Like there's just so much there, and it's disturbing. Do you ever think we get the Snoke story told? Does the Maz Kanata story ever make sense?
Of course.
Like
by the comic book set, by the video game, by the
Is that what happens? Is that what happens? Do they do a new animated series? I know they're talking about an animated series. Where is this all going?
By the novel and by the comic book. C-3PO had that line of dialogue in The Force Awakens. Oh, I bet you didn't recognize me with my red arm. They did a 6-episode miniseries of C-3PO telling you how he got his red arm. Now, maybe that's a funny line in the movie, but realistically, that line's put in the movie to get you to go, oh, why does he have a red arm? Better buy the comic book. I've been told, well, if you read the Captain Phasma story, and if you read the Princess Leia novel, and you read this, then you'd understand Last Jedi better. But that's a failing as a movie, right? If I went and I saw Spider-Man Homecoming, and I didn't like, and it wasn't self-contained, and you were like, JC, if you just read Amazing Spider-Man issues 393 through 564, you would have really understood Homecoming better. I'd still say that's a crappy movie, right?
Right, but it's an episode of see when Marvel movies are not good, it's easy, and I like Homecoming, but
I did too.
But when a Marvel movie happens, it's an episode, it's a chapter of a book. Right. Jeff Loeb said that perfectly. He just said they're all chapters of a book. That's what these are supposed to be. That's what Star Wars is supposed to be. I mean, I ranked it, and before we get off on too much of a tangent, I ranked it 7th.
What's yours?
I had Empire, A New Hope, Return of the Jedi, Rogue One, Force Awakens, Revenge of the Sith, Last Jedi, Attack of the Clones, Phantom Menace.
Can I ask you this? Do you think that Force Awakens is a worse movie now, knowing that the things that were set up in Force Awakens?
Yeah, I do. I do.
That drop down
No, it doesn't drop down my list because of what it replaces. See, Revenge of the Sith, I think, is the best of the prequels. And the drama of Revenge of the Sith is better than the drama of Last Jedi. Last Jedi I never felt danger. I never thought this was in any peril. I didn't, and there was never, and it's all story. It wasn't effects or anything like that. And Revenge of the Sith has its flaws, but the scene on Mustafar between Obi-Wan and Anakin is effing brilliant.
You feel it, and you feel it. God, you feel it, right? Because that's what, you've watched, what? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 hours of Star Wars, 11 hours of Star Wars to get to that moment, right? You've waited 40 years for that moment, and they didn't disappoint.
Right.
My rankings would be, and these are I can justify them in this way. I think Return of the Jedi, A New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, Rogue One, Revenge of the Sith, Episode 1, Episode 2, Force Awakens, Ewoks: The Battle for Endor, Ewoks Adventure, the cartoon in the holiday special, and then The Last Jedi.
Well, we didn't go there. You see, I only did movies because the Clone Wars is better.
Well, yeah, and I just have to, I have to preface how far down Last Jedi is actually on my list. I really just didn't buy into what they were trying to sell me because I don't think they did a very good job selling it. I think they did a very good job making it shiny.
I'm trying to pinpoint the moment as you're watching it the first time and you saw it and you said, wait a second, what the hell's going on here?
Me?
Like, how long into it? Because it starts and there's that action scene and you're pretty much invested.
No,
correct?
I'm out when Poe Dameron goes into the who's on first, what's on second, I don't know's on third.
Oh, that was yeah. And then Luke throws the light, and then Luke throws the lightsaber.
Luke throws the lightsaber, and I saw the movie early. I saw it on Monday before it came out, and I was having difficulty with it. And so I told my girlfriend, I said, "Be ready. It's not very good. You're not going to like it." And when Luke threw the lightsaber over his shoulder, the lightsaber that he lost when he found out his father was Darth Vader during one of the biggest mistakes he ever made in his entire life, the lightsaber, the token that his mentor had given to him, look, and not to get too crazy, but like my mom passed away this summer, and I have a ton of her knickknacks and crap, right? Stuff that's worthless. And I have to throw a lot of this stuff out. But it's very, very hard because there's an emotional connection to it. Even if it's a bad emotional connection, I see the item and I think of my mom.
Mm.
For Luke Skywalker to flip that lightsaber over his shoulder like that,
I don't to your mom. Yeah.
I don't get it. He didn't even consider it. He didn't even think about his dad. He didn't even think about all the things he's been through. He didn't think about when Obi-Wan Kenobi gave it to him.
But what about the idea that is Rian Johnson having a squabble with J.J. Abrams?
There are better ways to handle that.
No, I agree. But that to me seems like that to me, right? But that seems like that and killing Snoke are the two ways he just says, "Well, screw this. I didn't like Force Awakens either."
Right. You know what I'll tell you is the best scene in that movie? When Luke walks on board the Falcon and R2-D2 shows him the hologram of Leia.
Yes.
And I'll tell you why that's the best scene in that.
Why is he always off? Why can't R2-D2 just stay on now?
Because BB-8's the hero. Out with the old, in with the new. But R2-D2, why is he always out? Maybe his batteries need to
turn him on. Just turn him on. What are you doing?
Slowed him down. The thing with R2-D2 showing that hologram is in that scene, in that moment, Luke says, "I'm never going back to the rebellion." And that moment mirrors A New Hope. And so R2-D2 makes a choice to play into Luke's memories and nostalgia. But what's so brilliant about it is when R2-D2 does that to play into Luke's, he's doing it to us too. So in that moment, we feel the same way Luke Skywalker feels, more so than we ever have in any other Star Wars movie, because that tugs on Luke's heartstrings the way it tugs on ours. So we understand his emotion in that scene better than any other scene in Star Wars. That one scene is so layered and smart and great. I wish the rest of the movie had done more of that.
It's a something. It's amazing to me how I felt so deflated. No, that's not a word. I felt so deflated after it. And it just seems to me that I have less anticipation now for future Star Wars movies. And yes, I understand what you said about, we're going to move on to the Han Solo movie, but I don't want to be the guy that tunes into the oldie station.
I agree. I agree.
I don't want to just, I don't like that about music. I don't like that. I mean what I say. The music of the 80s and 90s is so much better than the music of today. And I know that's what my dad said about the 60s. I understand that, and I hate it.
I agree. I'm the same. Look, today's my birthday. I turned 37 years old.
Happy birthday. But if you're listening to this, he might be 38 by
now. I feel the same way. I don't want to be the old guy who doesn't understand. When I'm a grandpa, I want to be able to talk to my grandkids about whatever the new Pokemon thing out is, or the virtual reality, or whatever's the new thing. My problem with Last Jedi is not the choices they made, but how they executed those choices. And if people love, and I want to preface everything I've said with this, if people really love The Last Jedi, I'm not trying to insult you and say that your opinion is wrong. I'm not trying to say that you shouldn't like the movie. If you can find joy in that movie, awesome. I am happy that you love it. You know, and I wish I loved it the way you do. But to me, Star Wars isn't about lightsabers, and it's not about weird CG horse things, and it's not about comedy. It's about continuing this modern mythology. And in this movie, I feel like they built a giant hit in the mythology of Star Wars that I don't know if J.J. Abrams or anybody for that matter is capable of climbing out of. And that's where I have the biggest problem with it.
I mean, it's going in directions that are really alarming. Really alarming. If people have great vitriol from listening to this podcast, how can they find you?
Twitter @Reifenberg. They can come and find me at the bar if they want to yell at me in person.
There you go.
Let me ask you this. When you first, did you read any spoilers about the movie? Did you know anything about it going in?
What did I know about it? No, I knew that there was a lot of training. I anticipated that, and I knew that Leia had a big role. That's all I knew.
So when Finn and Rose are in jail, and they had to find
we didn't even get to the. I mean, I did it on the other podcast. That whole thing is just a waste of time.
It just should be plucked from the movie. But you know what my girlfriend said when they get thrown in jail and you hear the person stirring? She goes, "Oh my God, is it Lando?"
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Did you feel that way when you watched the movie?
No. What I saw there was I accused Disney of influence. I just didn't think it was part of a story. I didn't understand Rose. I don't think you got the payoff of Rose. I like that Finn had this infatuation with Rey. I don't think him having a girlfriend makes any sense now. I thought their battle, their quest was stupid, and Benicio del Toro I thought was a cameo. I will tell you that. I thought it was a cameo, and I couldn't understand how he was still in it. I kept thinking he must be done, because I did see James Corden get blown up. I don't know if people saw that. James Corden was one of the fighter pilot, the rebel, fighters, and he gets blown up in a cameo. And I thought that was really neat. And I liked that J.J. Abrams did that. And I thought it was a very modern spin with these little Easter eggs. And I thought that was cool. Benicio del Toro meets them in the jail. And I said, oh, that's cute. Benicio del Toro. All right, let's move on. Yeah. And then next thing you know, he's still in it. And I'm thinking to myself, what? And if anybody compares Phasma to Boba Fett, you're an idiot. I mean, they're nothing alike. And Phasma has no payoff at the end, because what was that? Like, let's build her and keep her going. Like, I didn't understand. You kept Carrie Fisher's character, you kept Princess Leia alive, but you killed off Phasma? What the hell?
I don't understand. And maybe you and I are too old. And maybe our time is past.
That's the thing. Like, that's why when I knew we were doing this, that's the problem I'm having with Star Wars, is that, wait a second, I love this too much.
But to be fair, I know plenty of people who are 25 who had the same issues with the movie. So
I think the issues with the movie have to do with your length of Star Warsiness. I know I just made up a word, but like, if you are a fan for a long time and you've read a lot of things and you maybe watched Clone Wars or Rebels, or you did something, then you didn't like this. If you got on with Force Awakens, and there's a huge demographic of people that got on with Force Awakens, those people, I think, I don't think those people were served. I don't think there was enough of that. I don't know though. I don't. That's the thing I wrestle with.
This is the biggest problem I have with with Force Awakens and Rey and Last Jedi and Laura Dern and all these characters in this movie. There have been so many I shouldn't say it that way. There have been a handful of fantastic, strong female characters that have to overcome impossible odds to basically be superheroes. We saw it with Sarah Connor, with Ripley in Alien. I think Daenerys Targaryen in Game of Thrones is an amazing, strong, smart female character. I think the movie Wonder Woman did a fantastic job because even though Diana is a god, they still gave her character issues she had to work through. And they didn't need to make Chris Pine's character look like a bumbling idiot to make Wonder Woman look strong. Everybody's a hero in that movie. Wonder Woman is just the biggest hero. And I think where these characters fail is that they're not fleshed out. Jyn Erso, even. Jyn Erso is a character that had to learn the difference between right or wrong and stand up for what she thought was right in the face of everybody telling her she was wrong. That to me is an amazing female character. And I just don't see that with Rey. I don't see Rey making a tough choice. I don't understand how Rey knows the difference between right and wrong and good and evil and always makes the right choice no matter what, even though she's essentially 7 days ago was eating sand out of a bowl on Tatooine or Jakku or whatever they call it. I just don't. I think that it's too much fluff and not enough nitty gritty.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's a disturbing. It's a really disturbing movie, and I don't know where they're going with this. But
did you like Justice League more than Last Jedi?
Yes,
I did too.
But barely. I mean, Justice League in a nutshell. And then we're going off on way too many tangents. The Justice League, my problem with it was, I didn't think any of the characterization was good. Like, you know what we did on Justice League? We ranked the heroes.
Yeah.
With Wonder Woman 1, Cyborg 2, Batman 3, but a week 3, Superman a week 4, Aquaman a week 5, and Flash was abhorrent. Like it was insulting. And to have those characters, and then I didn't have a huge issue with Steppenwolf. A lot of people did. That didn't bother me as much. I just thought it got hokey. Like when Flash and Superman are laying there and they go, "Oh, I wish I had died." And I'm like, who wrote this? Like, I don't know. I didn't understand. I didn't understand. And I kept trying to anticipate what was reshoots and what wasn't. And I don't know. I think that universe, we did a whole podcast on that whole world, because if you're going to kibosh that world, you have Gal Gadot in it. And you're not going to have Gal Gadot meet a new Superman. I think you're in a pickle there, because if you're going to squash the universe, right? And you have a Flashpoint movie, so you could, if you wanted to.
Right.
And start over. Gal Gadot is a superstar.
She's amazing.
Right, she's amazing. And how do you not build it around her? But she met Bruce, and she, even in her origin movie, Bruce is in it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So I don't know how you do it. I don't know how you monkey wrench out of that. Like, you don't shoehorn out of something like that. I thought, one of the neatest things DC did this past year was they had a comic series, like a mini comic book series, where Linda Carter met Adam West and Burt Ward.
Oh, yeah. Wonder Woman 66 meets Batman 66. We had the writer on Fatman on Batman, I believe.
That's so cool. I mean, that kind of stuff is really, really sharp. And I just think they shoehorned into that. Like, they're kind of stuck in a pickle. And then, there's the question for Marvel, because Disney bought Fox, and now they'll have the rights to the X-Men, but they're not going to bring in decades of continuity.
Right.
For the same reason that Grant Gustin wasn't the Flash in Justice League. So, Tom Holland is not going to meet Hugh Jackman.
Right.
Like Tony Stark, Robert Downey Jr. does not meet Patrick Stewart or the young Charles Xavier. He doesn't. You have to start it over. I mean,
I don't know.
I don't know how you bring all that continuity. I think that, just to kind of put a bow on this, I think it's so interesting because one of the things that brought on this era of comic book fandom at this fever pitch, and the reason why they have 75 Comic-Cons a year for the various companies, the reason why they have that is because the source material finally ran the show. And you saw movies like the first and second X-Men movies and the first and second Spider-Man movies, and you saw all these things. And it just seems like now we're getting away from that.
I agree.
We're resting on laurels, and I don't want. That's my fear of that. Of the future is that we don't see Mask of the Phantasm anymore. Like I said when Justice League came out, there are 6 animated Justice League movies that are better than the live action movie.
Yeah.
Justice League Doom, Justice League Crisis on Two Earths, and then you have the animated series, which we're not even touching. You know what I mean? But
yeah.
And this garbage about they say it's hard to write a Superman story. That's fine. I'm sorry that it's hard. Some people have. There's been great ones.
Grant Morrison was just in here. He did Red Sun, right?
Red Sun. Yeah, that's a great story.
At the bar doing Fatman on Batman and talked a little bit about that. I mean, like, look.
Quit plugging. No, I'm just kidding.
Superman shouldn't be, you got to do it every once in a while. Superman should not be that hard of a story to write because there's so much, especially in the world today, there's so much alienation and racism and all of this stuff that, like, you write a Superman story around that. That's who he is, I just think it's lazy. And I think it's people have gotten away from what is at the heart of storytelling. If you listen to Grant Morrison talk about when he did Wonder Woman, he didn't just sit down and start saying, what would it be cool for Wonder Woman to do? He dove into where did Wonder Woman come from? And now there's that great documentary out about it. But it's like the guy who invented Wonder Woman was a polygamist. He had a wife, but he had the wife, and he had like a much younger woman that they like had a kind of this 3-way relationship with, and everything in Wonder Woman ties back to this guy's life. And so Grant, who's a great writer, looks beneath the surface at who is Wonder Woman and then tries to write that story. And I think what people do now is they just go, well, Superman needs to have laser eyes and cold breath and be really strong and lift up a car, and he and Batman don't get along. That's enough. It's like, but that's not who Superman is. It's superficial.
It's just it's a weird time. It's the fact that there's so much out there, and Warner Brothers Animation is doing a Death of Superman 2-part movie. I can't wait. It's going to have all the fake Supermen and all the other things. And I told you this 10 years ago. I mean, that story is what got me into comics. That's going to be fantastic. That will be brilliant stuff. I think the Crisis on Earth X was genius. It was great. And you saw some really great things, but one thing that I did a whole podcast on. I had issues with Supergirl because I didn't like that they seemed to be adjusting the plot to just try to lure viewership, and it just seemed like, I'm not saying don't try to get viewers, but good stories should sell itself. So, for example, John Jones is on Supergirl. And he goes out to Mars, right? And obviously on a television budget, they're not going to all be green, even though that's what you would think they would be, right? The Martian Manhunter, that we know that story. why do they all morph into black people? Like, what is the connection there? So then you have that on top of it. Then Supergirl's sister is with, she's a lesbian, and that's fine. I just couldn't explain that to my 7-year-old, and that's fine. She's not the target demographic, so I didn't have a problem with that. But my issue that I did have was she meets and falls in love with Maggie Sawyer, who has been in the Superman animated series, has been in countless comic books. And Maggie Sawyer, last I checked, is not Mexican. But on Supergirl, she meets her Mexican father, who doesn't approve of her being a lesbian. I'm thinking to myself, since when does Sawyer become a Mexican? And then in the Supergirl world, Linda Carter is the president, right? She's also an alien, which I think is a great homage. It's Linda Carter.
Mm-hmm.
The father, in yelling at, and arguing with Maggie Sawyer, says they're trying to build a wall against us. I said, they are? In National City? in the world where there's a Supergirl? Linda Carter's trying to build a wall? So I'm holding these things to higher standards. That's out of love. You know what I mean? I want her to do well. I love the idea that she's there. But I made the parallel on the podcast last year, and I said this, and I got a bunch of flack for it. I said, Supergirl's analogy is she's Robin. That's who she is. She's a sidekick. Name one good Supergirl story that he's not in. You wouldn't do a series. You wouldn't do a television series on Robin. It's
Although
not
I think
enough.
There's a Nightwing movie now.
Well, they might. Yeah. And if they're smart, they'll give him the cowl. Let him be Batman. If Affleck's not going to do it, you keep the legacy going. Hell, do Terry McGinnis for all I care.
I would love that. But bring back, I just saw a thing on this today. Bring back
Michael Keaton.
Michael Keaton.
Yeah. To be the old Bruce Wayne. That would be pretty awesome. That'd be pretty awesome. All right.
Let me ask you this as we wrap up. Are you excited for Han Solo?
I'm excited. I want to know what all the problems were. I love the Lego movie, so I don't understand why those two guys aren't doing it. But they had a change in directors on Rogue One, and I thought that was amazing. So,
are you excited? I mean, Ron Howard he's
a brilliant filmmaker.
Brilliant. And I think the issue was with the Lego guys is Han Solo is sarcastic. He's not a comedian. And I think they wanted the movie to be...
But you knew what he was when you hired him. You know what those guys were. So that's where I don't understand.
But you would also think you knew what Colin Trevorrow and Josh Trank and everybody else they've fired. They've fired more directors than they've kept.
Well, and I also did not abhor the Fantastic Four. Josh Trank's Fantastic Four movie is bad. It's not abhorrent.
No,
it's not that bad. It's okay. I went into it, you hear all the Rotten Tomatoes and all that other stuff.
Yeah.
And I thought that was worse. And I think we did the podcast and we called it Fantastic Four. It wasn't that bad or something like that.
Yeah. I agree.
It wasn't.
So I'm interested about Han Solo. I hope they spend more time with Lando than they do with Han, because I don't really. The only thing that interests me about Han Solo is Ron Howard.
Well, and I wonder why they didn't take the guy from The Age of Adeline. Did you see The Age of Adeline?
Oh, yeah, that guy.
The guy that looks just like him. I mean, I wonder why. He must have been, he didn't get the role, but we'll see.
Episode 9, May 2019, 18 months away. Excited about that after Last Jedi or no?
I mean, I'll see it, but, it's not the same anticipation.
Yep, I agree.
Force Awakens made me want to see episode 8. I was like, get me to episode 8. I have questions. I want answers. And if the whole idea was to jumpstart a universe, they did. After that, I don't know. I don't know that this did. I don't know that this perpetuated
What do you even
enough.
Start episode 9 with? Episode 9 is the Rebels versus the Imperials again. Oh, by the way, I have to say this also. In The Force Awakens, which took place, 7-8 days maybe before Last Jedi? 10 days? let's say a month maybe. The First Order was a fringe group at the beginning of The Force Awakens. And somehow in between Force Awakens and Last Jedi, they've taken over the entire galaxy. How does that happen? Remember, Poe shows up and he's like, oh my God, they've got a Star Destroyer? Holy cow. And in this new one, he's like, they've taken over the galaxy. While Rey was holding the lightsaber out to Luke, the First Order took over the whole galaxy, despite the fact that their $100 billion super weapon got destroyed with all of their troops on it. Also, if they've taken over the galaxy, why don't they launch TIE fighters against the rebel ships that are fleeing, or call for reinforcements?
I mean, please.
Literally, it reminded me of watching like a low-speed car chase. Like when
How many times did you see it?
I saw it once early, and I saw it opening night, and I don't really have any interest in seeing it again.
I saw it once. I didn't see it. I didn't see it early. I didn't see it even opening. I saw it, I think, the Monday after it opened. And I will own it. Only because I'll want to see it again, but I don't need to see it in a theater again. That was my other thing that I complain about, is that, it was so freaking long.
Oh, it's so long. And you know what happens?
I'm spoiled now. I watch movies on an iPad, and I see them differently now. You know what I mean? Hell, I watched Rogue One while we were doing this podcast. No, I'm just kidding.
I mean, the issue with a 2.5-hour Star Wars movie is that in Star Wars, pacing is important. The joke on George Lucas is the only direction he gave is faster, more intense. But thank God. Can you imagine if Han, Luke, and Leia were chewing the scenery in A New Hope? Well, kid, traveling through hyperspace ain't like dusting crops. Without precise calculations, this ship could fly right through a supernova. No, you want to hear it like this. Traveling through hyperspace ain't like dusting crops, boy. Without precise calculations, this ship could fly right through bounce too close to a star, fly right through a supernova. That would end your trip real quick, wouldn't it? That's the pacing of Star Wars. That's why it works. It's hokey, but it works because it's quick, and you believe it because it's quick and intense, and every scene is life or death. In this new movie, it's traveling at a snail's pace. I didn't need to be a 2.5-hour movie. I think it would have been better at an hour 45.
But you could have, killed Finn's whole plight.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Just leave him in the back.
And this is no disrespect to the, one thing twice, I didn't want to interrupt you, and I wanted to bring up, the acting is fantastic. Like the girl who plays Rey, she's brilliant. And, all of the cast and a lot of the people, there's some really good performances in there. That being said, our gripes are with the written word.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? Like the performance and the production are brilliant. That's why somebody asked me if it's not a Star Wars movie, is it a bad movie? And I said, probably not, because there are movies that I see that I don't fully love the story, but I enjoyed watching. And if it doesn't have the weight, that's why I called it a matzo ball. Like if it doesn't have the weight of the whole universe, your whole legacy behind it, isn't there a level to understanding just how far this could go?
I am going to say the exact opposite. I'm going to say if this was not a Star Wars movie, this would be Valerian. It is incredibly pretty and done by a fantastic filmmaker. But ultimately, it's 2 hours of pretty artwork on the screen with no story behind it and no characters. And I think it would fail in the same way Valerian failed because of those reasons. If it didn't say Star Wars on it, how much money do you think this movie would have made? At 2.5 hours, if the characters weren't flying X-Wings, they were flying Vipers or whatever.
Well, what did Valerian do?
$40 million. Massive.
It makes more than that.
I don't think so.
150. It doesn't make its money back, though. It doesn't make its budget.
No, I think this movie was saved because it was called Star Wars and because it had Mark Hamill in it and Carrie Fisher's last performance.
You got it. That is J.C. Reifenberg right there on the Hall of Justice. If you like this show, iTunes markets podcast based on rates and reviews. So rate it, review it, and if you have any gripes with it, just direct them right to him. He likes that kind of thing. We can do that. For JC, I'm Seth Everett. The Hall of Justice, first podcast of 2018. Thanks for listening.